Donald Trump and the Republican Party are really in the midst of draining that swamp. Mike Pence breaks tie as Senate votes to kill rule allowing class action suits against banks. What happened to the forgotten man will never be forgotten again. The forgotten man will never be forgotten again. I thought you were looking out for the little guy, for the average Joe. This is the exact opposite of doing that. The Republican-led Senate narrowly voted Tuesday to repeal a banking rule that would let consumers band together to sue their banks or credit card companies to resolve financial disputes. Vice President Mike Pence cast the final vote to break a 50-50 tie. The banking industry lobbied hard to roll back the regulation, which the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau unveiled in July. The rule would ban most types of mandatory arbitration clauses found in the fine print of agreements that consumers enter into when opening checking accounts or getting credit cards. The vote reflects the effort of the Trump administration and congressional Republicans to undo regulations that the Republican Party argues harm the free market. The measure now moves to President Donald Trump's desk for his signature. So arbitration, for those of you who don't know, that is basically like a private court system. So in other words, you get into a dispute with the bank, you got fleeced to one extent or another. You say, all right, I'm taking you to court. Well, the fact that they rolled this back means you can't do that. What they end up doing is saying, oh, it's cool, you have a dispute? No problem. We'll resolve it. But just step over here into our own private court system. What? So it is that bank's idea of justice. That bank's own system that they set up where they pretend like it's objective and you can get, the right answer that way, and you can perhaps get compensated for how much you were screwed over. But you're going to be shocked to find out that when it's arbitration, they overwhelmingly agree with the bank. Maybe because, the bank set it up. So, think about what's happening with Wells Fargo, for example. How there was massive fraud where they opened a zillion accounts in people's names. So they would just open bank accounts in people's names. And then they were doing that so that they can report that they're still growing. And that would allow them to do fraud and boost their stock price in a manufactured way. So, under this system, when you say, hey, me and my buddies, they opened an account in our name, and there were damages that were done here, we're going to take them to court. Under this rule that the Republicans rolled back now, they're saying, no, you're not allowed to. Oh, you have a dispute? Well, why don't you just go to to private arbitration and work it out that way? And there's a reason why the banks have been pushing for this. There's a reason why they've been lobbying for this. Because it allows them to keep getting away with financial crimes. So it's hilarious that the Republicans love to portray themselves as tough on crime. This is the exact opposite of tough on crime. When they say they're tough on crime, they mean if somebody in the hood robs a liquor store, lock them up and throw away the key. Or God forbid, somebody's caught with a joint or a blunt. Lock them up and throw away the key, mandatory minimums. But, with Republicans, if you're talking about systemic torture that the U.S. government is involved in, illegal wars, you're talking about financial criminals, well, then they're on their side, and they're on their side because they pay their campaign contributions. So this is not a serious governing party. They're off the spectrum. They are so immensely beholden to big money interests that they do things where there's not even a theoretical argument that this is the way to go and that this makes sense. They try. They say, well, free market. What does that even mean in this respect? Even under a rigid libertarian ideology, that doesn't mean you can't sue if there was fraud done or there was some sort of financial malpractice done. Even rigid libertarians would say, Well, of course, if there's fraud or something and you're wronged, yeah, you should be able to sue. This is the Republican Party saying, no, I want to take that away because something free market, even though free market makes no sense to say that in this context. So it's just them 100% being on the side of financial criminals. That's all this is. The people who pay their campaign contributions and they do their bidding. It's just fucking pathetic, man. And then they have the nerve to portray themselves from time to time as the populist party. Donald Trump, the nerve to portray himself as a populist. You are not. You are the biggest establishment bitch boy under the sun. There you have it. How can they say stuff like drain the swamp? How can they say stuff like they're looking out for the little guy? This is the exact opposite. And by the way, you could put the clock on it. I've been saying this for the longest time. Everybody knows it. It's just a matter of time until we have the next disaster and crash. Because when you deregulate and you cut taxes for the rich and you let the people on Wall Street and the big banks do whatever they want because you think they're the smartest guys in the room, everybody knows that's just corruption. And they're not the smartest guys in the room. And they crash the economy with the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. So you let their greed run amok, and eventually the chickens come home to roost. And they're making sure in every way imaginable to rig the rules so that when it happens again, there's still no recourse. And the servile government that represents corporate America will waltz in and bail out the people who crash the economy again and use your tax money to do it. And then God forbid there's some sort of issue where you're directly wronged and you want to sue to try to get just compensation. They go, no, that's not even an option. That's not even on the table. Go to arbitration where they'll tell you to fuck off. Make America great again. What they really meant, they didn't tell you this part. What they really meant is make America great again for Wall Street and big banks.